Yeah,
I'll give
we're
you a
not.
little,
We're not. You're gonna give me like some.
dude. I have honestly, Reaper Reaper's a great DAW. It's a really underestimated DAW, and one of the things that's awesome about Reaper is the stock noise canceling plugin. It's really really impressive. It's hilariously enough called Reefer, and but it's really really cool. And what you do is you can set it, as long as you have a bit of noise that's like by itself you can isolate, you can have it analyze that noise and then remove it from, the rest of like like if I'm recording a book or something like that.
Yeah.
And dude, it's super impressive. It works really really well, and
I
it'll
think you
actually
mentioned
not
this
destroy
when,
the quality of the rest of the audio.
When I was at JMM, you might have even mentioned it, like the stock Reaper plugins.
Oh, maybe. Right on. Yeah.
That sounds like an isotope
for
thing.
It works like an isotope thing, and it works actually with like the quality of an isotope thing. It's really really impressive. It really is. It's a good one.
Wow. I mean, I never thought Reaper really cared about noise cancellation. I mean, I used Reaper, I want to say like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and they were like just figuring out their summing engine, and like you'd make an awesome mix and you'd bounce it, and then you'd listen to it and like, wait, this doesn't sound the same.
No, yeah, I know, dude, and honestly, like I had heard things about Reaper a little bit before I started using it, but once we switched over to it and I really got into it, I realized that as strange as it can be, it's actually amazing software, and it's unbelievably customizable because you can assign shortcuts to literally any action that software is capable of.
Yeah.
So it's really really cool.
I didn't know how customizable it was until I did editing for you guys. I was like, oh wow,
dude, oh my god, yeah,
that's
it
awesome.
is, and it's so funny how like when you do editing like that, if you're doing podcast editing or audiobook editing or like a lot of voiceover type stuff, you really have different wants than you do when you're like editing music. And so doing when I mix, doing it in Pro Tools and Logic, like that's always what I want. I've tried to mix in Reaper. It's like okay, but it's not quite the same, mostly because I don't know it quite as well for that.
Yeah.
But for like a single track long edit or like a 2-track mono long edit, dude, it works really well because it has some of those editing modes that just make your edits really easy. And, like,
are you talking about what is
it's
that
really
thing
nice.
called? Where like everything moves
the ripple mode.
Ripple. I keep forgetting what that is.
Ripple.
Yeah, Ripple
yeah.
mode. That's good for audiobooks, right?
Every Grateful Dead fan's favorite editing tool. You don't get that joke, but they have a song named Ripple. It's a popular
yeah,
one.
sorry. This is totally...
No, I know.
Oh man, the last time I even heard a reference to the Grateful Dead was through Jeff. Yeah, so it's.
I was about to say, if Jeff watches this at some point, he'll laugh at that.
Oh shit! So wait, so you're still, but you're on the recording end now, not too much editing.
Yeah. No. I don't really. I don't edit. So I guess that's a good intro for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you do?
So now I'm the chief engineer at John Marshall Media, which is a post-production studio for audiobooks and voiceover and educational media and stuff like that. And it's pretty awesome. When I first started in audio, I obviously got into it to do music, like we all did. Wait, give me one second.
Sure.
I'm gonna swap out these fucking headphones. These are terrible.
Aw.
Hold, please.
AKGs. Hey. I've seen those before.
Go for the really big fuckers. You probably have. These, I think, came from SAE.
No way. Oh shit.
They're solid. They're solid headphones,
Okay.
Anyway, so when I first started in audio, I got into it to do music because we all got into it to do music. It's what leads most people to do this. But I was open to possibilities because even though like I was really into music and I still am, I just love playing with sound, and I loved like manipulating sound. I got a little into sound design and like doing all that kind of stuff, and working with voiceover is really cool. And when I found out about that, it was something where I was like, yeah, you know, maybe I could do that one day. Like, it's audiobooks specifically wasn't my goal. It's not like I was like, hey, I want to record books all the time, but it's a lot of fun. And, you know, maybe down the line, getting to work with more voice actors as well, getting to, I always said I wanted to record like cartoons and stuff like that, which would be so cool.
Yes, that would be so
like how cool
dope.
would it be to record an episode of like Bob's Burgers or something like that, or to record like with some of the actors. Man, like, so much fun. So, and it's so cool because now I get to work with people like that. It's only one person at a time usually, but in the past few weeks, I've done some books where like we had voice actors that are doing upwards of like 20 to 40 voices for a whole book, and they're doing different characters, and they're doing like all this awesome stuff. And
dude, that sounds like so much fun.
It really is. It really is.
I mean, you don't think
a bunch of these people do like video games
about, like,
and stuff.
getting into audiobooks when you start. Like you said, you start out thinking like, I started out as like, I'm gonna be Metallica and that's it. Like, that's how I started.
Gonna be G-Talica.
Yeah, you remember.
That's right. Always, dude. One day we'll finish that song. I still have the files for Under an Era sitting around somewhere.
No way! Oh my god, dude! I was just watching some like background, not background, some behind the scenes. I think Judy. You remember Judy? I think she took some footage from that day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh, that's so funny.
I don't know what she's doing now. Yeah.
I think I just saw it was her birthday. She posted on Instagram. Yeah. All right, wait. Last time I saw her, I'm gonna do one more headphone change.
Dude, okay.
Hang on. All right, these are. There we go. These are my noise canceling shits that I usually use. They're just a little tight sometimes. So.
Okay.
All right, that's
wait, so you started as a musician, what, playing guitar? Bass?
Yeah, I started playing guitar when I was a kid. My dad was a musician, and he has excellent musical taste, and passed that on to me, so I grew up listening to, you know, classic rock and the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix, but also like a lot of blues, and, you know, I love like Johnny Winter, and I love B.B. King, and I love Albert Collins and all that kind of stuff. And I always loved playing guitar, and I still do, but I'm just okay. You know, I'm a decent guitar player, but I always said that I hear music better than I play music. So that's why I wanted to be an engineer. You know, I realized that after a while, where
were you in a band?
I couldn't. I was in bands on and off when I was growing up. It was kind of unfortunate because I was friends with people who like weren't really into that kind of stuff, and we had been friends since we were younger, and I, you know, just kind of kept the same friends for a while. But they weren't into that kind of stuff. So like when I started learning to play the guitar, and I like wrote my first awful punk song, and I showed it to them, and they just like laughed. They were like, dude, that's ridiculous. You wrote that? What the fuck? And, you know, now like that's hilarious, but when you're like 13, that's really discouraging, and you're just like, oh, I must suck at this. I'm not gonna do this so much anymore. So, you know, I was like playing covers, and I was jamming with a few people. The other thing was like when I was in high school, I was trying to play with people and like jam some blues, and no one else was trying to play that kind of stuff. They were all playing like punk music and pop music, and, you know.
Wait, where is this?
Dave Matthews and stuff like that. Central Jersey, where there's, I don't know, but yeah.
There's nothing
a lot
in
of
Central
that.
Jersey.
Well, I mean, there's some stuff, but yeah, I mean, it was unfortunate, and I wanted to, you know, when I was playing, I wanted to play more blues because I wasn't great at stuff, and like, you know, Dave Matthews growing up was like an artist that I loved, but his music was hard for me. He has giant hands too when he plays. So So he, it was tough. So like I was trying to play blues and I didn't really get to, and I played on and off, but as I was growing up, I realized that like I couldn't play like a lot of the blues guitarists that I liked even, but I could identify them just by hearing them play. So like, my dad would put on like a Johnny Winter record or something like that, and I could hear it from across the house and go like, oh yeah, I know who's playing that. Like not even when he's singing, just he's riffing or whatever.
Oh wow.
I knew his style. I knew his style, his tone, like what his guitars sounded like. I was able to pick that stuff out, and so that's how I realized over time. I was like, wow, I really do, like I hear music a lot better than I play music. So that's what kind of led me to be an engineer. And there was one experience that like really turned the corner when I was in college. I've probably told you the story before. When I was in college, I went to Bonnaroo before my senior year, and I had an unreal experience when I was there. And part of it was from the first night I saw Fish in particular, because that was a night of seeing, and there were a lot of factors involved with what was going on that night. Also, it was Beastie Boys and Fish, because Beastie Boys came first and then Fish went after, and like all of that just blew my mind, and I had never seen anything like that before. I'd never heard live music like that before when I was there. And I realized that I really wanted to work in music. I had like the epiphany, and I was just like, I have to work with music. Wow. I have to work with.
How old are you?
For my life, was that like 20? I think. Wow. I was 20 or 21.
That's amazing.
Which was cool, but it was unfortunately a little late. I'm just looking at the recording, make sure it's going.
I was gonna say, yeah, it does seem a little on the later side.
Right. So if I had figured that out, like, at the beginning of college or a little before I went to college, because, I could have, like, sought out people when I was in high school, like, hey, you guys are in a band, like, let's, try and record something. I'm going to get a few mics and put it together, whatever. Right. So I got to that later on. So when I left college, I had some gear that I had gotten. I got, like, an interface and a mic, and, I bought Logic and, started screwing around, and I went to I didn't really know what I wanted to do for like an actual job. Excuse me, Jesus. And I was working like odd jobs, whatever, and I was interning at a record label.
Wow.
Interned at this label called Merovingian Meravi. Changed names a couple times.
I love it.
Which was awesome. And yeah, you like that Matrix reference.
Yes.
But it was cool because that was a great experience to like show me what kind of the back end of music was like, what goes into working with a band and making a record and getting them shows and the whole process.
Yeah.
They weren't a huge label, but they did have a major label tie. They were a partner. So we weren't working with like giant bands. We did have a couple international acts, and like we had all our bands go on Letterman because we were hooked up with Worldwide Pants, and it was really cool, for a while. But it made me realize that I absolutely don't want to be in management. I don't want to be I don't want to work for a label. Like this isn't what I wanted to do. And I also met one of my first musical partners there, which was this dude named Frank, who we called Dr. Frank. And shout out to Dr. Frank, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without him.
Oh, wow.
Frank was a great songwriter. He's super into like Bob Dylan and like Leonard Cohen and
nice.
Nirvana and all that kind of stuff. Like great songwriters, and he's a great songwriter, and he was like recording stuff at home, and he was living the place where the label was like a giant floor of a building that had like an apartment in it or whatever, and he was living in one of the rooms because he was helping out, and he was friends with the dudes that ran it. And so we met and we started playing music together, you know. And when I started like working on stuff with him, I was playing. I was a little bit more of a lead guitar player than him, so we started jamming together, playing his tunes and like working on some of his stuff. And then I met a couple of their other friends because their whole group had been friends forever. And we ended up being in a band that ended up being the band Francis Jones and the Saviors, which was like the, you know, most together project I was ever in. We put out an album, and it was great. The band kind of fell together, and as a Jewish dude, like being in a band called the Saviors was not necessarily my first choice. Yeah, I always make that joke, but the way that it happened was really cool because Frank wasn't looking for a band. He just kind of had between me and like when Chris came back and our bass player and whatever, and we all just kind of fell into his lap and put a band together. And he was like, I wasn't even looking for a band. You guys were my saviors because you just like gave me a band. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, we can be called that. That was a cool way to have come up with that name, you know?
Oh, dude, totally. I mean, sometimes the best bands are the bands that just kind of fall together. They just happen. Yeah.
And that one was a lot of fun, and we had a great time putting that record together. We called the record The Bridge to Happiness. It was a really cool one. It was a great process, and it taught me so much about making a record because, you know, it was funny when I got to Engine Room, which, of course, anyone who's watched this knows well what that is by now. When I got to Engine Room, I heard Mark use this phrase, and it was really funny because I had already been saying this for a few years.
Mark is,
and the Francis Jones album taught me that. Yeah. And I heard him say, like I would say, you never know how to make an album until you finish it.
Yeah.
You know? And that's absolutely true. Like, making an album is one of the things you have to really be careful of is like getting caught in hindsight, especially at the end, because you get towards the end and you're thinking back and going like, oh wow, if I knew at the beginning of this what I know now, like I totally would have done the drums different, and I wouldn't have recorded the guitars like that, and I would have done all this stuff different. And like, dude, it's always going to be the case. Like, it's not like you're going to make the perfect record. Like, there's always something where you're going like, I could have made that process easier because, yeah, dude, like hindsight is 20/20, you know?
Yeah.
It just like, you can't get yourself caught in that. You have to learn from it and then just apply that to what you're doing next.
Yeah, and you have to, more importantly, you have to finish the record.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it too, man. And that, you know, anyone that's tried to self-produce a record knows, anyone that hasn't, that tried to, you know, produce even with a team, but especially if you're self-producing a record, knows, like, you set that end date of April and then eventually you're going like Thanksgiving release, because dude, it's just like,
it's so easy to get caught up in that. It's so easy to get caught up in that chaos of like, oh man, you know what, I could record that better, and you just, it's a very dangerous trap that I see a lot of amateur artists fall into. It's like, oh, let's go back and wait, hold on, whoa, let's finish. Like, let's finish this.
The burden of capability, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I can do it, so I should. I can do 19 takes of this guitar solo and piece together the best ones. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I mean, dude, you know, we've all seen that as engineers. Like, we've seen that in the studio as well. Every engineer's favorite facepalm is getting to the mix session with a client and having them going, oh man, I got like one more harmony I came up with. Can we just set up a mic and let me lay it down real quick?
Oh man.
No.
Oh, really? No.
But that's the stupidest part, because in your head you're going like, no man, but usually you're going like, yeah man, absolutely, anything you want, no problem.
Right.
Call down to the intern, get him sprinting up the stairs, you know, try and make it so that like you're still doing stuff, so that like, all right, so let me just like finish editing this one part, and then, you know, seamlessly transition into a vocal recording, because it's the easiest thing in the world to just like set up a mic and record something else.
I can't remember like the craziest redo that I've been asked. Like, let's It's not even coming to mind.
That's
the craziest.
That's a good
redo.
question. The craziest redo.
I mean, I'm sure I've been asked crazy redos, but I'm sure I've probably said no because it was so ridiculous. But I can't remember an example of something in particular. Like maybe a drum recording. Like, we need to redo those drums. Like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, that one's not happening.
Sorry,
that's not happening for sure.
We should have thought about it. But that's where pre-production is probably a very, very important step that not a lot of people think about.
Dude, that was one of the best things that I learned from Mark at Engine Room. Mark, one of the things that I always realized that he did best as an engineer was the production side of it. And he was also a very good producer, but he could come at it as an engineer, so he kind of was able to bridge that gap. But he was really good. He understood like how much attention you have to pay in pre-production. When he, and then I jumped on later, was going through the Mercury and the Architects album, he did like 2 or 3 months of pre-production with TJ, to figure out what instruments we're playing, what parts, what other sounds we want. Do we want synthesizers for anything? Do we want, real drums and fake drums? Do we want, all that kind of stuff to put together. But then they had a great roadmap for recording, and they were able to say like, okay, for this song we need these parts, these parts, these parts. For this song we need these parts and these parts. We need horns for these 3 songs. We need strings for these 3 songs. And it made the recording process really easy because they knew exactly what they needed for which parts,
right.
And planning that out beforehand. Somebody who I think when you were talking to Danny was saying something about when a singer comes to the studio and is just like, yeah, I could just do this, and the number one thing I've always said, whether it's a singer, whether it's a drummer, guitar player, whether it's a audiobook narrator, a voiceover artist, I can always tell when you've come to the studio and you didn't do your homework. You know what I mean? If you're a musician and you didn't practice your parts before you get to the studio, it shows.
Yeah.
If you're a voiceover artist and you haven't read your script beforehand and you don't know at least a little bit what's coming at you, it shows, because that level of comfortability with the material lets you come through it, lets you go through it smoother, and just makes it come out better.
Dude, totally
and then we get that time at the end of the session where we have like half an hour left, and I can go, all right, we got all that shit. Let's just riff over this entire song and see what you can come up with, and maybe we'll have some cool ad libs or something like that.
Yeah. That's so funny. I just did a session a couple of, I want to say, I don't know when this is airing, so I guess it doesn't matter when it happened. But I did a session where
a couple of time ago, dude.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say we've been stuck inside for how fucking long? Like time is it's just some time before whatever time now.
It's a crazy time. But like I just did a session where I had heard this artist and I was like, oh dude, I like this song. Let's go to Engine Room and like do a song together, and I can teach students and stuff. And it was interesting because like I liked the song that I had heard originally, but when he came in, I was like, oh, he's not prepared. I can totally tell. And I just ended up not enjoying the session as much as I thought I would. It's like, that was a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, because those are the ones that turn into work. Because if as an engineer, I can sit there and just listen to the song and listen for performance notes, not in the sense of like, you need to do that better, in a sense of like, oh, you're pulling those ghost notes on the snare going into the bridge, like do it more, do it for longer, do it louder, like really build those dynamics or something like that. Because then you can get into those notes that really make a record great.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like, you need to be on pitch better. You need to tune up before this take, and you need to like strum that chord all the way through because you're missing the bottom note, and that's the one that does it, or something like that. Because, because the guitar player didn't practice, and now when they're sliding up to that chord, they're just not hitting the way that they're supposed to. And
and they're not prepared. It's like now we're like, we've already set the bar low. I'm like, I'm not even inspired to do this anymore.
Dude, and when you see it happen the other way, I'm never gonna forget when I did sessions with the band that was Unconscious Disturbance and is now Added Color.
Oh yeah,
I was with them at Engine Room for a bunch of days. The first time I worked with them, their drummer Daniel is so good. I love Daniel. He's a great dude, and he's an awesome drummer. And the first time that I worked with them, a couple of the tracks we recorded, because they were doing drums and bass for a whole album. A couple of the tracks we recorded, and they're like heavy. They're proggy metal, like Muse kind of stuff. And their tunes are not simple, but he was playing some of these tunes to nothing but a click track. It was just drums and a click, and he was nailing it. He had like all his parts were in the right places. I think he even punched in once or twice to like with nothing but a click. It was so impressive. Like, and that's how, like, right away, okay, he knows these parts inside and out. And if you listen to those tunes, I'm pretty sure they're up on Spotify under Added Color now. They're amazing, and the drums sound great. He's so tight because he did his homework and he killed it when they came.
Is it just me, or is it definitely like a surreal experience as an engineer when you meet your first very, very overly competent drummer? Like, I know for you, it's probably Sean Pelton. It's just something else.
So, shit. I don't remember if I worked with Sean or with Daniel. I might have worked with Daniel first.
Really?
But yeah, I mean, getting drummer and drummers, because like, especially with you and me, like, we have a special appreciation for drums, and like drum recording. It's one of my favorite things to do. It always will be. But I think that goes for any musician. When you get, let's call them what they are, man. When you get a studio musician, because studio musicians are different than live musicians, regular musicians. Like, when you're a studio musician, your skills are at an incredible level. They're incredibly tight. They're incredibly adaptive. You can come in and play on pretty much anything, and watching guys do that. And Sean Pelton is my favorite example of that, for sure, because he is unbelievable. He will finish anything in 3 takes, and it's on point. And it was amazing working with him the first time too, because his 3-take formula, pretty much. I don't know if he does this on purpose, but that's what Mark always used to say. Like, right. I remember Mark would say, like, he would bet people back in the day when he would work with Sean, like, he'll get it in 3 takes, because the first take, like Sean, and again, pre-production, so important, because Sean is somebody that will have listened to the song before. He's going to make himself charts, and he's going to know, okay, this is how long we're doing the verse. This is when I have to turn around the verse to get into the chorus. This is when I turn around the chorus for the reintro, all of it. So he's going to go out, he's going to do the first take. That's what's going to kind of get him into the groove. You'll hear the first take as the engineer and go, okay, so we're done.
It's like, great.
You did it. He's almost perfect, and you're done. So then he'll do a second take, because that first take was like his warm up, and he might see some stuff wrong with that. I don't fucking know, but so he does the second take, and then after the second take, come into the control room, listen to it, and sit with the artist and go, okay, what do you think? Because this is your tune, so like, I want to make sure you dig all of this. If there's anything you want me to change, if there's any parts, or he might have like alternate ideas and say like, okay, cool, so for this part I did that, but I could do it a slightly different way if you are into that, if you dig that, if you're hip to it, because Sean's the coolest person in any room he ever walks into in any era. He really is. And then once they do that, he goes back out for the third take, and you're done. And not just done in the sense of you've recorded drums. if you've done your part as the engineer to do the setup properly and get the right sounds, the drums are probably at least 3/4 of the way mixed, and they are without editing required because his timing is perfect.
Yeah.
I've listened to him make a click track disappear straight up. And, you know, but also like be able to hit perfect to fall like a little bit behind or a little bit ahead.
Right.
And just that's the thing that makes a great drummer. It's you know, having that pocket, it's holding that rhythm, it's being able to push and pull when you need to. And I think that, you know, contrary to other musicians that you see do it, we know that because drums are so foundational, and because, as I used to tell all my students, bad drums break everything. You know what I mean? Whatever setting you're in, whether it's a recording, whether it's a live show, whatever it is, bad drums break everything. If your drums are bad, so will everything else be bad.
Yeah.
Your record is going to come out bad. Your show's not going to sound good. Like, it makes all the difference.
I'd agree with that.
You know? And so that's why, like, hearing that from a drummer and just hearing Sean finish a tune and just go like, well, I'm done. I don't even need to edit this. And I remember realizing that at one point, I don't know when it was, but like Mark, you know, he used Sean as much as possible. Sean was the drummer he would bring in to play on pretty much any record that he was producing. Yeah. And it dawned on me at one point, I was like, that son of a bitch, he hasn't had to edit drums for a project in like how long? Because he just hires freaking Sean and it's done. The rest of us are sitting here. The rest of us are sitting here with like Beat Detective and chopping drums into a million little pieces, and he's just like, you know, and that's one of the reasons making records is different now than it was in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
And, you know, when studio musicians were being used on the regular. I don't know if you've ever seen The Wrecking Crew. It's a documentary on Netflix. I highly recommend it for people if you're into this stuff. It's all about the group of studio musicians that was around in the 60s. And there was a group of maybe like 30 studio musicians people, that played on like maybe like 80% of the hit records you heard from that decade. Right. It was just those people, and they were doing like 4 and 5 sessions a day. They worked with different bands. They were doing jingles. They were doing scores. They were, you know, spending the night with the Beach Boys, like just everything. And it was because studio musicians, and you know, Sean is always the perfect picture of this, will come in and play and leave. And that's it. And you know, but that's what they've earned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like their skill level, they've earned that. The fact that they are good enough to just come in and play and leave.
Right.
Like that's a wild amount of skill.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I mean it's got nothing to do with the amount of time that they spend. It's more like the quality of work that they do. And yeah, Sean's a perfect example of somebody who just nails it. I don't think I ever did a session with him, but I only heard stories through you and Mark about him. But yeah, he's totally something else.
It 100% is. I'm making noise in the background.
Doesn't matter, dude. This is so chill. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, I know, but like I'm an engineer. I'm recording myself.
So funny story, right? Like when I first started this, like we literally, like my goal with this podcast was like not even a podcast. It was like a mini series. It was like, oh, I just want to talk to some cool people. And when we called it Engineer and Audio Career, like about 2-3 episodes in, I'm like, since we're talking to engineers, maybe we should have good quality audio. Maybe that should be a thing.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's so funny. I did something at my studio. We were recording something that we thought was going to be like a little podcast series for us at one point. My boss and I were talking, and I realized that at one point too. And when I was doing it with the engineers, we came up with we were going to do like a little podcast with our engineers to talk about like, you know, engineering tips, stuff for voiceover, stuff like that. And we were talking about it just of like, yeah, we have this little Zoom recorder we keep around the office for like interviews and stuff like that, for quick stuff. And we can just use that, and wherever we can get it, make it really easy. And I'm sitting here going like, dude, this is going to be about audio, and we're in a 6-room facility. I think we can put a mic on this. Like, and man, honestly, the power of one mic, because I did one with a few people. We have 87s in all our rooms, so I just set that to bi-directional, put one person on each side of it, and man, it sounds great.
Yeah.
If it wasn't so hard to edit, because when you do like a podcast, you want to be able to edit shit. So if it wasn't so hard to edit with 2 people on the same mic, that would be the way to do all podcasts.
Dude, that sounds like a cool idea. I know, yeah. Talking to engineers, because it's like one of those things where you get into engineering, you don't even think about, oh yeah, you could be a voiceover engineer. Totally. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, and dude, like, the topic of what we were doing for that, or what you were saying, like, the best stuff that I've learned from other engineers. School was great to show me some gear and show me and like set me up so that when I got to a studio, what I was looking at didn't look like a giant spaceship that I've never seen before. You know what I mean? It still looks like a spaceship, but like I've been trained by NASA.
Right.
But
it didn't intimidate you, basically.
So no, exactly. And so school was great for that, and school was the reading the manual part. You know what I mean? Where it really like showed me what the gear does and what I'm looking for and functionality and stuff like that. But like my education, my classmates were from engine room. My classmates were you and Danny and Lee, and like we learned, that was school. That was where we took the technical knowledge and learned how to put it into a career and how to be an engineer, because it's all about that experience. The stuff that we learned there was invaluable. Getting to talk to the people. Engine room is a great place to learn. Yeah. Getting to not just bounce ideas off you guys, because it was great, because we all, especially between all of us as engineers, like no one was really in each other's way. We weren't working on a lot of the same stuff. Like we had common interests, but we all kind of had our own thing going on. So like we weren't, in like heavy competition, always getting in each other's way. It was really about like helping each other out, making sure like, okay, if I know this thing, it would help that you know this thing, so that we can all do great work, and we all came up together.
Yeah. It really was
and
a
like
hub
that,
for learning, for sure.
Dude, that experience, but even beyond them, because of like all the extra producers and all the suites in the back and all the extra people that were always in and out through there, the amount of people you got to talk to was awesome, and the vibe there was always such that like everyone's cool and everyone's kind of hanging out, everyone's comfortable. And like, yeah, you don't want to, get all up in people's way and like be bothering people. But like, if you're sitting there and chilling, like it was really common to talk about like, okay, like, what are you doing? Who are you working with? What are you guys doing? And then you end up talking to the engineer about like how we set up the room, or like, oh, we're working on vocals and we're doing this crazy thing. Well, that's how you learn, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Like people would literally just walk into the lounge and be like, oh my God, I'm recording vocals and I just tried this compressor. You guys should come and check it out. Or like, you should try it at some point. It was very much a shared experience. I don't know why. I don't know how that actually came about, but it really was, man.
Well, and I think that was one of the draws for a lot of the producers that like had their suites in the back, because they had their own rooms. They were doing their own thing. And that's really cool for when you're working. I love working in my own space. I love my room, broken as it looks, because we're moving soon. But I love working in my own space, but also like it's really nice when you're in the middle of a mix or when you're in the middle of a session to just like be able to take a break and go shoot the shit with some people for a little while. Yeah. And even kind of bounce ideas off of people, even if I don't want someone necessarily sitting in the mix with me, it kind of helps to be able to just like talk something out to someone if they're around the studio, or, it helps in general, but it depends if you like having people in a mix with you. I know some people do, some people don't. I personally go both ways, and I remember Gabe actually used to say this to me about like students sitting in with him, because we used to always have students sitting in with mixes, and I did that all the time. And I didn't really care so much because I knew that I was doing it for students a lot, so like I was good with kind of, you know, if they had to leave halfway through or whatever. He always said to me like, if they're gonna come sit in with me, make sure they can stay the whole time, because if I have somebody sitting in a mix with me, inevitably I'm going to say to them like, hey man, what do you think of this? Or like, you know, how's this thing sound to you? Because it's just having another set of ears in the room and it's good. But if you start a mix with that and then they leave halfway through, it just messes with your head.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. Yeah, I guess I'm open to
I had never really
either.
thought about that either.
You know?
And you, like, you know, you kind of like I did, you got so used to teaching. We were doing it so much with like the observations and doing all that stuff. Excuse me. And so like I got really used to just having students in and out and all around.
Yeah.
Like all up in the rooms and whatever. And it was fine, you know. But I think at Engine Room, that culture of teaching and just like people being able, because it wasn't always teaching, it was like inadvertent teaching, because it was just that talking, you know. So like Ant was in the middle of a mix session and he'd come out and he'd just be like ready to shoot the shit, and I would be sitting there and be like, yo, what are you working on? And then we'd have a talk about something.
Yeah.
You know, an hour later I realized I just got the 5 greatest vocal tips I'm ever gonna get, you know, or something like that. Big, always much like everyone, big shout out to Ant for teaching all of us
basically
stuff,
right.
Always.
Dude, like Chris Griffin, Mark, everybody, like
dude, Chris. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Chris was great because he was also a great teacher about it, because he, you know, from being like a vocal coach and doing all that, he understood how to get his point across and make you understand it. Really get it to a point where like you'll understand what he's saying and he'll get his point across. Chris was so good about that. Yeah. Even you know, like Mike Cortez and Rob and like Caffrey, when he was there, I would talk to Caffrey sometimes. Learned some amazing stuff from Caffrey. We got there, you know.
Yeah, man.
Mike was great. Dude.
Still, yeah. That's why I try to go back to that place as much as I can in terms of like just helping how I can. It really set me up for a lot of things. Even though in the moment sometimes it was very difficult to see the big picture. It definitely acted as like this breeding ground for knowledge.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I think we all ended up realizing about Engine Room in our own time, for the most part, is that like Engine Room was a great place to start and a great place to learn, but it wasn't a place to stay for most people, you know. And that's cool, you know, because some places have to be like that, and Engine Room, I think, does a really good job. And, you know, while we saw some of the dumbest stuff that interns have ever done, we also saw some great people come through there, and guys that like I'm glad are working engineers. You know, I'm like it really made me happy when like Darley, he was one of my students. I did the whole program with him, and then he came on as an intern. He got moved up to a GA. He was engineering sessions. Like, he's a really good engineer, and I was really happy to see him work. Yeah, you know, because he wanted it. He was really into it, and he had a good mind for it, and he did all he could to learn, and he was working, so it showed. Yeah, you know, that's like you can always tell who wanted to learn because they were the ones that ended up working. Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Like the ones who wanted to learn stuck around, and like you said, became part of the culture of just like listening to people like Ant and Lee and Danny and all. And inevitably, it was just a matter of time before that person moved up. Like right now, Leonard is basically top dog at Engine Room in terms of engineers. Like I was just there, and dude, like they were telling me like
So I was asking, like, so who are the engineers who work here? And they're like, Leonard.
that's it. Leonard. That's it. Fucking Big Len, man. I'm so happy for that. I'm so glad he's doing that. Like, that he is he's a funny dude, man, but he's a great engineer, and he was I loved when he got into Engine Room. I was always happy to hang out with him. He's a good dude, and he's a fire producer too. That's what they tell me. His beats are killer. He really is.
He works hard. He works really hard. I mean, he's always worked hard ever since he was an intern. He put in the hours. He put in the work. Dude, he would always do bumpables. He was one of the ones training. Yeah.
There are engineers, that don't want to do like all the late hours and do all the crazy work and do like, any session that comes through the door anytime. I know those engineers because honestly, I'm one of them. I was never trying to download a beat for someone off of YouTube and record them till 4 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, that was not what I was trying to do. I did it for a little while, and it definitely taught me some stuff. But like, the other thing about that is, you got to realize sometimes there's people better equipped to handle stuff than you are, and play into your zone, because I fell into that trap early on where I was like, I can work on anything. I like rap, I like rock, I like EDM, I'll do anything. But then you don't really get focused, and so it's hard for you to get down a lane of clients. You're like, okay, I have one client that's rap, one client that's rock, one client that's jazz, and one client that's EDM. I can't show off their music to each other to get more clients because I only have one of each of them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or something like that. And so, like, it helps, I find, to kind of get in that lane. And so, and as an engineer, like, especially, being in Engine Room, I always liked that all of us didn't really compete. Like, Lee and I, when we were both GAs, like, the sessions that he was taking, I wasn't really looking to take. And the sessions that I was taking, he wasn't really looking to take. And so we worked really well together because it wasn't that, super competitive thing. And on the other side of that, not really working till 4 a.m. category is Leonard, and Lee goes in that category too, man.
Yeah.
Fucking shout out to Lee, who, especially when we were coming up, like, you got a session in the Bronx at midnight? Cool. I got this. I'll be there. And he's going to come and he's going to kill it. And like, he was, and it's why he's such a good engineer, because he did stuff like that and he built up his experience and he got his chops down, and now, like, there's nothing that can walk through the door that he's not going, yeah, I got this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what experience gets you. That's what we all learned in Engine Room. That's what Lee can do and Danny can do and you can do. And like, we got that experience that gave that to us.
Yeah, it was the experience. It was like the platform for us to try stuff out, to fuck up sessions, to do well on sessions, and simultaneously get our credits up. Yeah, it was pretty dope. Pretty dope, man.
Yeah, dude, it really was. I mean, you need that, you need that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally forgot that you had been GA. It came back to me when you said
So for only it was for only a little while, because remember, it was a weird thing, because when I came in, there were when I first started was like Danny and Samir's last week of being GAs. I'm never gonna forget that, because my second day was like one of those ridiculous incidents of working in a studio. Danny was helping out with a session for who was it? It was Prodigy from Mobb Deep. Uh-huh. And it was a Tuesday night, and Prodigy wanted a blunt, and so I had to go out and get blunt wraps for him. Danny was like, yo, he's looking for touches, like, do you know what to do? And I was like, I got this. So I go out. It's like 9:30 on a Tuesday night, which, if you're anywhere else in Manhattan, is fine. But Engine Room, both to its benefit and to its, you know, kind of lacking, is in the financial district. So while that's really cool and you can be like in the cut while you're in Manhattan, you're on the 22nd floor of some building in the financial district, no one's bothering you.
Yeah.
Nothing's open past like 5 p.m. So it's 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and I walked around for like an hour and a half going like, yo, Prodigy needs a blunt wrap, and I cannot find one. I went to like 4 different places. I went down to like the ferry terminal to see if there was anything there. I called Danny. I called Danny. I was like, man, I have never had this much trouble finding a blunt wrap in my entire life. I don't know what to do. Nothing's open. Like we're in the middle of Wall Street. I don't know what to do. And I'm walking back. I get back to the studio to like tell him for the last time that I don't know what to do. And Scotty had just gotten back, and he's standing in the lobby. And I talked to him, and he said like, "Oh, what's going on, man?" And I told him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, there's a bodega like right around the corner and like a block down. They're open till like 11." And I was like, "Cool." And I bolted out to go get it. But like, oh man, I was running the city, and it was my second day as an intern.
Yeah.
So I was just like, yo, I can't fuck this up. I don't want to come back like empty-handed. I don't want to, you know, have not been able to do this. So that was crazy. And then like a week later, they both got promoted, and then Lee became GAs, and there was another GA, and but that was kind of start. And then after a few months, like I was kind of looking at being GA because, you know, I had been kind of stepping up. I started doing some sessions for Mark. We got along well, and he liked the way I worked, and he had me. Some of that was for the Rooks album. You remember that band?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Like R&B funk kind of. Yeah. Super cool. The Rooks. That was an awesome project to work on. That really helped me out a lot too, because that taught me a lot about, you know, the recording process. It taught me a lot about Mark's recording process specifically, because, you know, when you're an intern, assistant, whatever, the engineer that you're working for, you want to know about their process. That helps you do better for them, because, you know, you want to do, I think like Rohan was talking about this, you want to do it like they do it. They don't want you to do it like, they don't want me to do it like I do it. I'm their assistant. Once I get to be the head engineer, I get to do it however I want. But now I'm the assistant. I'm working for them, so I want to do it like they want to do it. So that way they're working in their usual system. You know.
Also, you learn,
and that makes you a better.
You learn techniques.
You learn techniques. You learn new techniques. Everybody like that. One of the best parts about being an audio engineer, and one of my favorite parts about mixing and doing all of this, is that it doesn't matter how you did it, as long as it sounds good. Right? Now, within that, there's always going to be like a faster way to do it and a slower way to do it. And if you're doing it the long way, then maybe like try and do it the fast way. Because if I can do something in 15 minutes versus in 45 minutes,
right? Yeah,
it's going to make the mix go better.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like at the end of the day, as long as it sounds good, it doesn't matter how you did it.
Yeah.
You know? And getting those other techniques, learning like, oh, they use a different plugin for this, or they route their effects differently than I do, or whatever, it opens your mind, and it shows you, you know, new stuff that you want to try, and it shows you, you know, all that, new techniques and everything.
Dude,
and,
it just reminded me, like, when you talked
really
about,
helps.
like, Engine Room being the place to get your skills up and everything, and whereas SAE was kind of like just familiarizing yourself with the terms. Like, I remember when Benoit, oh my god, Benoit. I remember when Benoit recommended me to Mark to be his assistant mastering engineer, and I sent an email to Mark. I was like, yeah, I know a bit about mastering. You know, I studied under this guy and stuff. And then the first day, I walk in and he shows me like the Sequoia system. I'm like, oh my god, I'm totally out of my league right now. What the hell is this? But I learned so much about his signal routing and why he uses certain gear, and how even through mastering you learn about mixing, and it was totally just get into it. Do it.
Get into it. There's no such thing as bad experience, especially in audio, because you can apply it, you know, so many different places. I never realized how beneficial working in voiceover would be, but now when I work on music, I can hear shit in vocals that I never even listened for before. Hearing like, you know, the way that you A really good example is I was working on a vocal that I was editing, and something about it sounded weird. The vocalist hit into a chorus, and it just sounded kind of weird. I moved it a bunch of times. I thought it was a timing issue. This was when when I was first kind of starting in VO. I moved it a bunch of times, and I just kind of couldn't get it right. I worked in voiceover and audiobooks for a little while. Then I went back to this mix, and I realized, oh shit, it's a cut breath. This word sounds unnatural because you didn't actually hear her breathe in before the word, and so it's a little bit jarring. So when I took the edit and I left it right where it was at the beginning, but I dragged out so that the breath was there, perfect.
Wow, that's awesome.
So like being able to hear stuff like that and just going like, oh, it's because you didn't breathe the right way. That's what makes this vocal sound weird. Like those are great details to be able to hear, and you would never think that like working in audiobooks is going to help you with music, but it will. You never think that, working in music is going to help you with sound design, but it will. Like whatever it is, it all helps. Working in live sound teaches you how to mix better. Like all of it.
Fast. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even dude, like podcasts.
Working in live sound.
Say it again. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like working in live sound, that gets you fast. You got to be fast.
One of my first jobs was doing editing podcasts at a little food network. I shouldn't say little, but a food network. And obviously I was doing it because I needed money, and it was like, it was a job. But I later on realized, so they paid me, I think it was like 12 an hour or 15 an hour. And like, as I got better and better, I could finish these mixes in it's a podcast, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I was getting paid the full hour.
Yeah.
I wonder if I should say this publicly, but anyway, it is what it is. But
no, dude.
Exactly.
It's how a lot of it works, man. You do what you can.
Exactly. I mean, and again, they're not paying for the amount of time; they're paying for my skill set. So
exactly, which is extremely worth it. Everyone should know that. So worth it.
Valuable. But I realized that through doing podcasts, when I went on to do music, I was fairly fast at editing. It just came so naturally. It's like, oh, wait, this is probably why I'm so good at editing, is because I did so many podcasts on a regular basis. So yeah, I think...
Dude, it's really funny. It's funny that you say that, because I did that in the other direction. When I got into audiobooks, one of the first books I worked with, it was this really awesome fantasy series, and we were doing a punch record, and the director that I worked with was this producer from McCaslin named Tom, who's super cool. And when we were doing that session, we finished, and this was one of my first sessions. He was blown away. He was like, dude, you're one of the fastest engineers I've ever worked with for recording books. And it's because I came from working in music, and I came from working with clients and working with rappers that are sitting there and going dude, why didn't you fly the hook yet? Are you done? Why can't I punch in right now? I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah.
Those dudes don't have patience. I didn't I wasn't doing that stuff on the regular, Lee and Leonard and Danny, whatever. But I was doing that. I did that stuff enough to know how that works, and to know, those clients, they got no patience. They're not sitting and waiting for you.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I've only done a few hip hop sessions, but yeah, it does make you it pushes you even faster. Yeah.
Fast. All the hip hop engineers I worked with, dude. Even watching, you watch Trey Songz. Trey can engineer for himself. He's fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that makes a great engineer. Watching Pete. At one point, I was in a session with Pete. You remember Big Pete?
I never got in a session with him.
Fast. One time I was in while he was doing some work, and Pete was fast, man. And this was what I came up, and even Lee is fast and Danny's fast. All these dudes that I was sitting and watching, they were fast, and that was one of the things that I realized of that's one of the things that makes the session run well. And that was when I learned the client should never be waiting for you. You know what I mean? If you're sitting there and the client's taking 20 minutes between takes because they want to, like, you know, meditate between every one, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm ready to go. I'll hit record whenever you're ready. But I don't ever want to have the client in the booth standing there going like, dude, I'm ready to go. Like, what the hell's taking this guy so long? Why can't we just start recording? Especially because they don't, you know, and you communicate when you're doing stuff like that, you know, keep the communication. Oh man, I'm just like cutting up this one thing. Just give me 1 sec. And I got it. All right, here we go. You know, whatever it is. But like, they're sitting there, they're waiting, they're paying for this time. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I think you go deeper. Like, if you're an artist or a talent of some kind and you're ready to, like, go, like, it's so annoying or frustrating if you can't go in that moment because you lose the magic.
Yeah, man. Yeah, especially with music, especially with, you know, when you're the voiceover actor and they're really, like, doing those parts with emotion. That's important, you know, and the feel is what it's all about. There's being an engineer is such a weird. Being an audio engineer is such a weird form of engineering because it's a stupid example I used to give to students, but like when you look at like a civil engineer, right, or like people that are building bridges, engineers that do that stuff, they don't ever build a bridge but then have to go, okay, but does the bridge like it? Like, how do they feel about it? Is the bridge okay with this change? But as an audio engineer, we have all that technical knowledge, you know, the ones that do it for a long time, like you have all that technical knowledge, you have all that stuff, compressors and frequency and EQ, like all that built up in your head. But at the end of the day, you're going like, dude, how does it feel? Yeah. You know, you can check all your numbers and you can measure everything as close as you want, but if it doesn't feel right, if the music or the recording, if it doesn't feel however it's supposed to feel, happy, sad, you know, angry, whatever, you did it wrong.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. You know, and if you did whatever you did, if you did whatever you did and it was technically right, but it doesn't feel right, you have to do it again.
Yeah.
And working with an artist, like, that's it. You want to capture the moment. You got, you know, the vibe of the session. One of the other things I learned from Mark in production and in, you know, doing sessions was like controlling the vibe of the room, you know, and making sure that your vibes are good. And then you combine that with some great advice from Millis. Shout out to Dan Millis, everyone's favorite.
Oh, wow. Engineer. Episode, what is this? Yeah, he's mentioned on every podcast.
Shout out to Dan Millis. Love you, Dan. One of the best things, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever heard was Millis when he was talking about like being in a studio, and he used the phrase master the hang. You have to master the hang. You have to be able to be comfortable in any environment and not weird people out, you know, and be present and be, you know, engage with people to the right degree, because you don't want to, you know, some people don't want to over engage. Some clients want to come in and just not really talk to you and just get the recording done. Some clients want to bullshit between every take. You know what I mean? Like, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But just don't mess with the vibe.
That's so interesting that, like, first of all, the vibe, yeah, I think everybody talks about that. It's a big lesson I try to teach my students as well. But it's funny that you said Millis said master the hang. I feel like he's just genuinely the type of guy who could do that. Like, even if he wasn't an audio engineer, if he was just working at, like, Starbucks, he could probably just hang with you.
Well,
like,
dude, well, short, like, now, but... yeah, the next time you talk to him, ask him to tell you the story of when he first started working.
Okay.
I remember him telling me that where he, like, his first few days, he, like, showed up in, like, a tie or something like that. Because he, you know, he really wanted to do a good job. And because he was working, it was like a big mastering house he was working at. And they said to him, like, you know, dude, you're doing a good job. Your work is good, but, like, you got to chill. You know what I mean? Like... everyone thinks we just like brought in a member of the CIA to our session. Like you gotta relax. And it really is, dude. So one of the funniest things at Engine Room, there were the two studios, Engine Room and Dubway, and I'm never gonna forget the perfect picture of this. I was setting up in Dubway for a session one time, and it was one of those times when they used to have them with like close overlap. So a dubway session had just ended and our session was just starting. So I went in to set up the room. The client was pretty cool. He and like one or two other people got there and they came in a little early. So they were sitting with me while we were setting up. We were talking about what we were going to do. And while we were doing it, one of the dubway interns was breaking down the dubway stuff from the session before. Right. So he does that. We're talking, whatever. We leave, and the dubway dude was a nice enough guy. He was like a little bit awkward, but like whatever, he's a nice guy. But he finishes breaking his stuff down, he leaves, and the client looks at me and goes, "Yo, he's not coming back, is he?" And I was just like, I was like a little bit struck because like you could tell the dude was a little awkward, and like the vibe in the room was a little awkward with him there. But he said that to me straight. He just looked me in the face and he was like, "Dude, he's not coming back, is he?" And I said to him, I was like, "No, it's cool, man. He works for the other studio. Like, he was just getting some gear out of there for them." He was like, "All right, cool." But, like, that's so blatant of, like, if this person is in the room, even if, like, this client didn't know even if I maybe this was the guy that was going to assist me, and maybe he was just going to sit there completely silent for the entire session and not say a word. Yeah. Although, like, he talked once or twice while we were prepping, so like you could see it was a little awkward, but just from that the client like just wasn't into that vibe, and he was just like, "Yo, I don't want this guy in the room because it's gonna mess my head up." And he was a singer, and that's a big thing.
That's totally fair, that emotion man. It's like, again, you're trying to capture feelings, and you have to be comfortable enough to express those feelings. And yeah, I mean, dude, that would have just been a waste of his money. Yeah, it's so true. That's what it is. And honestly, I've heard. I remember watching you talk about this with a couple of the other guys too, of like how hard it is for singers. Recording vocalists is one of the hardest things, and being a singer is one of the hardest things. And Chris Griffin used to talk about this a lot. He's such a great vocal producer and such a great vocal coach, and talking about how a lot of vocal engineering sessions is not so much engineering as it is producing. You're trying to get them in a place where they can deliver the best performance. And the thing that I realized that makes that so hard is that vocals is you're the instrument. You know what I mean? And so like, no matter how confident of a singer you are, no matter how long you've been doing it, that's always going to be the case. And like, if I'm a guitar player and I fuck up and whatever, the weird sound that I just made comes out of the guitar, and did I mess it up? Yeah, but whatever. Stuff makes weird sounds. When you're a singer, that weird sound just came out of you. Is you, yeah.
I made that weird sound. It was my body that made that weird sound. And so inevitably, like, you're going to feel some kind of way about it. You might, if you're experienced, maybe you're comfortable with it and you can just move on and you're fine. When you're doing voiceover, you hear all the weird body sounds, mouth clicks, like weird snorts and burps and stomach noises and all that stuff. And man, like, it's fine. Yeah. You deal with it. But for a singer, that's the performance itself is very personal, because an artist is going to be like that in general, no matter what instrument they're playing or using. But for a singer, because it's their body that's making the sound, like, that adds another degree of personality to it. That adds another degree of like how personal it is. And you got to realize that, that aspect of especially working on music is really, really important, and something that I feel like a lot of people forget. You're working for your clients. That's your thing. You've talked to a lot of the other guys about how this is a service industry, and that's 100% true. And but you have to remember that, like, the people you're serving, maybe the guy that you're serving, the person who wrote this record, they've been working on this album for the last 6 years. This is to them one of the most important things they're ever going to do with their life. And like, they're a little crazy about it because it's that important to them. And so like, as an engineer, like, getting an attitude when they say, "Hey man, I want to do another take. That wasn't right." Well, that's not helping, because they're just trying to they've put all of this work into it. For you as the engineer, it's Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you're doing this afternoon. This isn't like this isn't the project that you've spent the last 6 years working on. This is just Wednesday. But to them, like, they're putting everything they have into this. You know what I mean? And like, sometimes that makes people behave a little strangely. Sometimes that makes them a little overcritical. Sometimes that makes them a lot overcritical. But it's your job as an engineer to adapt and to work with that and to, you know, get them in a comfortable place where maybe they're not being as critical, or maybe you can just help them through it and go like, yeah, man, let's do, you know, you want to do one more take? I feel you. You got this. I felt where you were going with that, and like, just push that a little bit more. I think this one's going to be it, you know, and really like hype them up and get them to that place, because they're going to thank you and the music is going to thank you, and like, everything's going to be better because of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for this it's funny because all of this ends up being stuff I used to say to my students. But like, for lack of a better way to put it, any idiot can get into a room, plug in a mic, and press record.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's not actually that hard to do.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It really isn't.
Make sure the shit doesn't light up red and like go for it. But to get a good sound, to get a tone that fits into the song you're working on, to get a good performance out of the artist you're working with, to get a good vibe in the room, like, that's what makes a great engineer. That's what makes people, you know, want to keep working with you. And then while you're doing all that, having that technical aspect in the right point of your mind of going like, all right, I know this sounds good. Oh, I'm listening for these little mistakes. That was a fuck up. We're going to go back. We're going to punch in, you know?
Yeah.
Putting all that together, and like, that's the kind of stuff I learned over working at Engine Room, over, you know, the years of being an engineer. Like, that's the reason why experience is the most important thing.
Dude, that was so beautiful. And that thing you said about vocalists, like, it's so funny. I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago, but I love the way you said how it's coming, like, your body is making that noise, and it like, yeah, of course you would feel a little insecure about it. Why wouldn't you feel, you know?
Right. If the trumpet makes a weird sound, like, yeah, trumpets make weird sounds. Guitars make weird sounds. People, you know, people miss-hit when they hit drums, and you make a weird sound. Fine, but like, that didn't actually come out of you. That's such a, when I realized that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, why wouldn't you feel weird about it? Like, if I made a sound like that in front of somebody that I just met, I might feel weird about it too.
Yeah. That's, you know, a huge thing. I never thought about it like that. That's so fascinating. Oh, wow.
And dude, and it's a really powerful thing. Like, you know, funny as some of these sounds may be that people make, it's a really powerful thing for you as an engineer to just be sitting there when they all of a sudden like tense up because they just made a weird sound. You're just like, dude, no worries, happens all the time. Let's get it again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you completely brush it off as just like, that's fine, whatever. We're just gonna do another take. There's 1,000 reasons why we might want to do another take. That's one of them. Fuck it, let's go. Do it again.
Right.
That's it. And then all of a sudden they're going like, oh yeah, all right, yeah, that's normal. I'm good. I got this, and they can just kind of keep rolling.
Yeah, because you have voiceovers and stuff. You have no music underneath it, right? It's just dude, voice.
It's crazy, and it's really easy for people doing that kind of stuff to like get in their own head about performance and about what they're hearing and about stuff like that, because, you know, especially I know some voice actors that like record their own stuff. They'll, especially the ones that record books, some of them are home narrators, so they record at home. And I've talked to some that like they get some software and they start home narrating, and then they can edit themselves, and they're going like, yo, I hate this. I recorded that same line like 8 times because I thought I could do a better performance, and now I have to pick through all of them, and I don't know which one to use, and I usually end up just going with the first one. Like,
yeah,
dude, it drives you up a wall. It's one of the reasons I don't work on my own music. You know what I mean? Like, I do some of my own music, and I'll do a little bit of it, but like, I'd go insane. You get that I'm bad at controlling that perfectionist end where I'm just like, yeah, but like if I record it one more time, it'll be a little more on the click, or it'll be, you know, I can just hit that line a little bit smoother. Like,
yeah, it really helps to have that outside perspective of somebody who's helping you get to your goal, but knows like
You need it.
He's not as like perfection anal as like, or knows like he just who's able to get you to the goal, which is to get a great product, and who knows like, dude, you don't have to be on the grid. It has to feel right. That's what it is. Well,
and it's one of the it's one of the things that I'll tell artists when I am engineering and also like when I do production for them, where I'm saying like, look, not that we can't fix whatever it is that you want to fix for the most part, but to a certain extent, you have to decide what degree of nitpicking you're going to go for on this album, right? Because there's a point where you can't turn back.
Right.
There's a point where if you start aligning stuff so perfectly to the grid, now we're aligning everything all the time, because if the first bit of stuff is aligned and the second bit of stuff falls out of alignment, now we really notice a difference.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you have to be careful not to dig yourself into that hole of nitpicking and fixing details. And just because it can be moved, should it be moved? Right. You know what I mean? Like,
kind of like what you were saying before. Like, we have so many options now. It's hard to decide.
For sure. And I understand polishing a record. I understand, the studio aspect of I can, especially nowadays, like I can polish a record. I can get things sounding tight and get them sounding aligned, and that's cool. But also, people have forgotten that it's cool the other way. We've gotten so used to it this way, but like, how many times do people still throw on like a Stevie Wonder record from the 70s, listen to it and go, yo, that's flawless. That sounds amazing. But if you're an engineer and you really pick it apart, like, is it flawless? No. I can hear in the vocals, Stevie Wonder was playing the piano and he was moving around a shitload and he was doing this. You can hear him swiping back and forth on the mic. That was a little exaggerated, but honestly, like, there are recordings where I've heard him moving on mic, and that's something where, like, now you'd do a punch or you would clip gain it or you would do something like that, but like, then that was vibe. That was the feel of the record, and that record feels so good the way it hits you in the chest and the way it just like, oh man, you don't notice.
Yeah.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Because the feel of the record is so good. And like, that's the crazy thing. So when you do it now, we have, Pro Tools and crazy editing software and Isotope, and I can remove clicks from someone's mouth if they need a drink of water, speaking of which. I can do all of that, and in some places that's really nice to be able to do, but in others, like, it's all about vibe. The one EP that I'm finishing up right now, we recorded this. It's a 6-piece like folk Americana rock kind of band, and we recorded all together. They did it 6 people. I put them. We were in engine room up in the mezz. They were standing in a big circle. The drums were in the piano booth. The guitar player was in the drum booth. All the other people were in the live room. We had everyone recording at the same time, and the vibe was great. And there was a click track. Most of the band didn't use it. It was just mostly the drummer, and then they stayed to him.
Right.
But then there was one tune. We did 5 songs. The last song it's this really open, beautiful, like ballady kind of song, and I turned off the click. I was like, guys, we're not recording this to a click. I just want you to go. I want you guys to just play this, just feel it. And dude, the performance was beautiful. There are a few, like, you get that like natural feel. The band has a really good chemistry together, and so you get that like naturally somebody lags a little or somebody pushes a little ahead to kind of slide into the next part, and it was great.
Yeah.
And if it was on the click and everyone was listening to a metronome, they might not be able to do that because they wouldn't just be playing to the feel. They'd be hearing they'd be hearing that metronome in their ears, and they would be trying to lock up to it. But because we just turned it off entirely, even the drummer wasn't hearing it. So like, dude, it came out so beautiful.
Wow.
And it was what that song needed.
Yeah.
And could I go in and like tighten up some parts for some of that? Maybe. But is anybody really gonna notice if I don't?
Right.
You know what I mean? Engineering, like, we always have to remember too that so much of what we do as engineers is like only for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I turn the 250 hertz up on the bass by 2 dB, is anybody gonna notice?
Right.
You know what I mean? Those are like those later decisions at the end of the mix where you're sitting there with a fader. I was with one of my friends one time, and I was just being a jackass, but I was sitting with him while he was mixing, and he was screwing with this part, and he was literally moving it like up and down by a dB for like 10-15 minutes, and I'm sitting there in the back of the room, and like I said, I was just being a jackass, but I really kind of wanted to get the point across to him, so he stopped, and I looked up at him and I was like, "Hey, do you think anybody but you cares?" And he turned around, and he promptly flipped me off and turned back to his mix, but then stopped for a second and was like, "Fuck you. You're right. I'm just going to leave it." And then he stopped, you know? And dude, it's so easy to get in your own head. I remember Gabe saying that to me at one point too, for a mix of like, when you get later in a mix session and you start messing with things you shouldn't mess with, you know, like I finished the drums. I really like the way the drums sound. I'm at a point where I haven't changed the drums in the last hour and a half. If I now don't like the way the drums sound, I probably have ear fatigue and I should shut this down until tomorrow. I'm done mixing for the day. Because if they sounded great before and I didn't do anything that would have changed them, why don't they sound good now? It's probably just me. And obviously, like, things in the mix are reactive. If I move the horns, it might mess with the drums a little, but like overall, you know what I mean? Like, don't go in and start remixing stuff that you already got right just because now it's 3 hours later, your ears are tired, and you may or may not be hearing what you think you're hearing.
Yeah, that ear fatigue thing I really learned in mastering when you're doing a full album and you're like 6 songs in and like you realize like, wait a second, why do I keep pushing the high end so much? And then you realize like, oh shit, I'm just burnt out, man. The album just progressively gets brighter until it's just nothing but a high pass, high frequency.
My shelf is now down at 2K and it's boosting by 9 dB. Like, yeah. Yeah,
what
man.
happened?
Like, that's absolutely it. That's absolutely it. And like, you know, that's why as a mix engineer, I went through a big cycle when I learned about the power of save as. You know? I was that dude when I was fresh out of school. I was that dude that had like 40 Pro Tools, like 40 PTX files in the folder because, you know, like I went to a different room. I'm working on it on a different date. I made like half a tweak to the bass. Let's be able to go back. Oh my God.
Oh my God, me too.
Dude, and man, like, that's part of learning to be an engineer. Like, you will go too far. You will fuck it up. You will put entirely too many plugins on a session and have to back off. Like, you'll do it. We all did it. Yeah. There's none of the engineers that you've talked to for this or that you talk to anywhere else haven't done that. You know, we've all done some shit like that, and we've all learned, and that's why, you know, that's how we fixed it.
Oh my God!
But oh my God, I had and especially when I got to Engine Room, I used to do a save as every time I'd go to a different room on a different day. So I had like mix session from blue, mix session from red, mix session from mez. Oh my God, it was so goddamn confusing. It was just like I would overwork, and that's something to be really careful of when you're starting mixing as well. Like, I would overwork the shit out of songs, be mixing the same song like in small increments for weeks at a time, and by the end just go like, I don't even know what I'm hearing anymore. I've listened to the song so many times in so many different ways, and I don't even know what I'm hearing or where I'm hearing it, or like, oh my God. Yeah. And you know, that rookie mistake
is real.
You know what I mean? Totally. That chaos is real, but it gets better. You know what I mean? You gotta remember that it gets better. You do work your way over that. You do find ways around that. And it's all about just building your own system. You know, like we said before, if it sounds good, it doesn't matter how you do it. So as long as it works for you, it's fine within reason.
Within reason. Yeah. That's a little
well, and like, so here's the thing, right? When I was in school, I learned that if you're setting up a mix session, if you're setting up a Pro Tool session, whatever you're doing, if you're setting up a board and you're leaving it in a studio, like whatever, you should set it up such that if another engineer had to come in and take over the session, they could do so without too much work. Things are properly labeled. Label everything. Oh my God, label everything.
Yeah.
I hate every engineer, like, knows the biggest facepalm of an engineer is getting a session, opening it and having it say audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, audio 4, and no. Take this back. No.
Yeah, audio
all the
1
way
is
off.
something else, and audio 2 is like horns, and audio 3 is drums. Like,
and then you're listening. You have to listen through it and label this shit. Like, okay, I think that's a synth, although it could be a guitar with pedals. For some
or if,
reason,
like, multiple
there's 4
instruments
different
are on the
bass
same
tracks.
track. Like the same track has like horns.
Oh my God!
It's like, really? Aren't we
Right.
past that era right now?
This track is horn, snare, and vocal. We have 4 different bass tracks. I recorded 19 passes of the guitar. I want you to use at least 10 of them. No, man. No. And, you know, that, like, organization as an engineer is super important. It's something you should learn early on. And everyone has their own system. I laughed really, really hard when I was watching your episode with Rohan. And you guys were talking about the colors of your mix session. Yeah, I know you did. And you guys were talking about the colors of your mix sessions, and you were arguing. And I'm sitting there yelling at both of you, going, "No, fuck you! Drums are orange and vocals are yellow."
Oh my God!
Everybody has their own system, but you need some way of organizing. You know what I mean? You need some way, and like, if I opened one of your sessions, would I disagree with your colors? I mean, I'm sure I would, because everyone has their own color scheme. But would I be able to figure it out, and would I be able to know what everything is and where it is? Yeah, because it's all together, it's all labeled, and like, regardless of what colors you choose to turn things, it's easy for me to look at this and go drums, bass, guitar, effects, buses, like whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes the biggest difference. So like, you know, some of my mix templates, like I used to have students look at my mix templates and get dizzy because like I'm a nut bar, you know? I set up mix templates overkill. Like some of my mix templates are way overkill because they're just options. You know what I mean? Like I put everything into one template, and then when I actually go to set up a mix, I might import half those settings, or I might, you know, take away a quarter of those effects because these aren't stuff that I want for this mix. But when I set up the template, everything is in there because I know a lot of the stuff I'd like to use. I know some of the crap I like to experiment with. Yeah. And so I just like put it there so I can import it later, because it's, you know, doing a mix, like never forget how much fun that is. Yeah. You know what I mean? As an engineer, like never forget how much fun mixing is. And if you're going through a mix session and you're getting stressed because like, all right, I have to make a new bus, I have to pick a new plugin, I have to read a little bit of the manual for this plugin to figure out how this works, or like whatever it is, it's not going to be fun anymore. It's not a good experience. Like mixing is so much fun, and it should be. And that's also why, like, on the student tip, because I know some of your students watch this, one of the things I always used to tell people is like, when you're learning, separate working time and learning time. If you're sitting down to do a mix, do a mix. Do the mix to the best of your ability, get it done, and do that. But don't do a mix and then start reading plugin manuals for 4 hours, learn a little bit and still be confused, and then finish the session and feel like you didn't get anything done because your intent was to do a mix and all you did was read a bunch of shit that potentially confused you.
Yeah.
Take some time later, sit down with that manual, sit down with that same mix, and mess with those effects. But don't try and do everything at once, and separate those, because then you're just going to have a miserable time mixing. Like, do a mix, and, you know, maybe you don't know all of these plugins. Maybe you don't know them as well as you need to, but you decided to do a mix today. Do it. See what you can do. I listen back to the stuff, you know, we all do this. You listen back to the stuff you mixed early on, and you're going like, dude, what the fuck was I thinking? You know? But that's how you learn. Remix the same songs over and over. Like, the files aren't going anywhere. If I do this song and I mix it today and I do a bad job, if I mix it 4 days from now, guess what? I can strip everything off, I can start over, and I can do a totally new mix. Try it again. Shit happens. It's how you, dude, it's how you learn. You know?
So true. So true, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
is
so much good memories, man. So many good. I'm glad we're all doing well. I mean, I'm having Samir on next week. That should be fun. I haven't talked to him in a while.
Oh, nice.
And then
right on. Yeah,
at some point I want to get Millis on too.
Nice. Hell yeah. Yeah, man. That, like, yo, Engine Room was the family, man, for a while, you know.
Dude.
And especially when you're doing that kind of engineering, like, I'm lucky now, getting into voiceover and, like, doing what I do, a lot of my stuff works on, like, normal operating hours. You know, I'm working sessions like 10 to 5 or whatever it is, which is cool, because then I get, you know, nights to work on music and, you know, hang out with my girlfriend and my dog and, you know, whatever else I want to do. But when you're doing music and stuff like that, you know, when we were working in an Engine Room, like, you're doing sessions all the time. You're at the studio a lot. Like, that's where you live, like, half the time. You know, that's where you live more than half the time, realistically. And so your friends end up being other engineers, and they end up being the people you interact with. We got really lucky because those people turned into actual friends. You know, like, we had a good crew of people to hang with, and, like, good engineers and just good people. And it was awesome because those were, like, that, I know that inspired me to be in the studio more, because I knew that even when I was done with my shift as an intern or as a GA or whatever, like, I was still trying to stay and hang out. I wanted to, you know, go shoot the shit with Lee, or, like, go sit in when he was mixing, or go, you know, talk to Ant, or go talk to whoever, you know. And that was really invaluable to me.
Dude.
You know, shout out to all those guys, because they helped, you know, all the struggles of getting through that time were lessened because they were all around, and you were able to have somebody that knew what you were going through to say, like, man, this is bullshit. And you had somebody sitting across you going, you're right, that is bullshit. And, you know, they know exactly what you're talking about, and that helps so much. And so, you know, that was just a big thing. And that was great times, you know, when we did, like, sitting before we had the smoke room, being able to, like, be up on the roof and hanging like that. And then once we couldn't go up on the roof anymore, which was a sad day for everyone, that smoke room was so funny, because that was the place, that was, like, one of the spots to chill, you know. And, like, people from sessions would be chilling in there, producers would be chilling in there, everyone would be hanging out. And it was just such a small, awkward shaped room. And so you were, like, forced to interact with the people that were in there. It was, like, it was almost more awkward to go in there and not talk to a random stranger than to do it, you know, because you're sitting in such a way that you're, like, almost next to each other, kind of facing each other, and, like, we should be having a discussion. So you would just talk to people, you know. And I met so many good people, and I learned so much good stuff. And I heard, like, just some ridiculous stories, just, like, ridiculous shit that people would say. And it just, man, it made it so much fun to be there. You know, one of the best parts about working in a studio is working in a studio. Like, you get to hang out in a recording studio.
Yeah.
How much fucking fun is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you get a good one, like, you get all these cool people around, cool artists, people working on cool music, people, like, and especially from the podcast, you know, not even only people working on music, but, like, video people, graphic designers, like entrepreneurs that are, you know, working with a musical artist or a producer for something, like all these kind of awesome people that we got to meet and got to interact with.
Yeah.
And, you know, it helped me on like the personality interaction side of it, of, you know, how do you talk to all different people? How do you spend out here 10 minutes talking to some dude who's like an entrepreneur trying to build a food business, and then somebody in the next room who's a beat maker who just made a gold record, you know, or something like that. And it taught you how to interact with like celebrities. You know what I mean? You walk around the hall and freaking like Ice-T's walking around, or, you know, Ryan Leslie's there, or LL Cool J was there, like whatever, you know. And that's important for this job. You know, one of the things about this job is like there is kind of being able to be cool around anybody aspect, and like working with celebrities, like, you know, even doing audiobooks. Like I spent a week with 50 Cent recording his book, awesome. And that was fun. He was cool. But like, you know, it's weird for people to go in there, and I'm a little bit more weird about like not doing, you know, like the fanboy thing. And I definitely, because I know I wouldn't really want people to do that for me if I was in that position. It's got to get weird, you know. And like you can do it in a cool way, just be like, oh man, like, you know, I love your stuff, or like I heard that last thing you did, that was fire, you know, whatever it is. But like really geeking out on people, like that's not what they want, especially like they just came here to work, you know. They're people, you know. So like knowing how to interact with those people, and knowing how, like, look, I don't care if you're 50 Cent or like you're some dude that just found the studio online and is booking time to do a trial run at, you know, singing. I'm gonna treat you with respect. I'm gonna treat you professionally. I'm gonna give you a good experience, and, you know, make you comfortable in the studio, and that's it. Yeah. You know, and learning that that's the important thing, and just like, you know, like Milla says, man, master the hang. No matter who's in the room, hang.
I really like that.
You got to be cool about it. You know, whoever's in the room, you got to be cool about it. And, you know, hopefully they're cool too. Luckily, I haven't, like, any of the big celebs or anything like that I've gotten to work with, like, everyone's been cool. I haven't gotten to work with anyone where I was like, man, they were a dick.
You're lucky.
You know, and I've heard some stories, and I've worked with other people that are a dick, not any celebrities, fortunately. Sure. Yeah, but you know, it just, everyone's been really cool, and that always got me too. I remember when I was an assistant and LL Cool J came in to do a podcast, and I was assisting Samir for it. When he came in, and LL Cool J was so awesome. He walked in looking exactly like you would expect LL Cool J to look. He was in like this big black coat with fur on the hood. He had on sunglasses on. It's like 9:30 at night. He had a big gold chain and like a black shirt, and he's huge and ripped. And like, he walked in, and everybody wanted to see LL Cool J when he fucking came in, you know. But like every intern, like our office manager, everybody that was there, he went up to every single person individually, like gave him a handshake, said what's up, and then went upstairs to do his podcast. Like, he was so cool. Nice. Just fucking nice to everyone. Like, really awesome person to have in. And, you know, there's, like, he's a freaking international celebrity. Yeah. People in most countries, like, he's on TV, he's in movies, he's a huge artist. Like, everyone knows who he is. He's nice to, like, everyone he meets.
That's really awesome.
Why do you have to be a dick?
That's really awesome. Yeah, why do you have to be a dick?
You know what I mean?
Don't be a dick. Basically.
Why do you have to be a dick? Like, just don't be a dick. And that's something that, like, up-and-coming engineers should always remember, too. Because, obviously, just, like, remember that in general. It's good for being a person. Like, don't be a dick to people. But also, like, this industry is a lot smaller than you realize. Mm. You know what I mean? Oh, wait. One time. I gotta turn the fan and make it.
Oh, good.
All right.
Yeah, it is a lot smaller than you
think. this industry is a lot smaller than you realize, and I so often so often I go to places, you know, I've never been interacting at another studio or with other engineers and not found some common, like, oh, you worked at that spot? I was there once. Do you know, like, the head engineer there? We worked together a couple times.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And just, like, don't be a dick, because it's going to come back to you at some point. You're going to run into somebody that, you know, found out, like, hey, I was doing a session with this dude at this studio, and he was a jackass. It, like, didn't go well. You know, and at that point, it doesn't matter how good your quality of work is. If nobody wants to be in a room with you, you're never going to get clients.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all part of that, keeping the vibe going. It's like being a good person.
Dude, it is. Well, and it's also like the power of being a positive connection for people, too. I realized this. I met a studio that I was going to do some work with, and then I ended up like not moving where I thought I was going to move, whatever. But the mutual connection, because sometimes I feel like sometimes it's weird, right? You're talking to somebody else and you don't know if you want to bring up this third party. Like, you know, if I was talking to somebody and I was like, oh, so you know Jeet? Like, for all I know, they're going to go, oh, yeah, that guy's a jackass. I don't like him. Which no one would obviously ever say about you, because you're not.
I don't know. Time will tell.
Jeet's great. All right. Well, like a little bit, but that's why we're friends. Come on. No, but sometimes you never know, you know? So sometimes for some people you might think like, oh, I hope like they always had a good experience with them or whatever. But I remember when I talked to this dude, my mutual connection was Andy Van Dyke. Andy is one of the coolest, nicest people you will ever meet in life. And it was so great. And, you know, like this was a random studio somewhere, and Andy had worked with these guys a bunch, and like they actually knew him pretty well, and it was such a random connection. But like Andy's great, and there's no way you're ever gonna bring him up to anyone who's gonna go, oh yeah, that guy sucks, you like him, I don't want to talk to you. Like, right, dude, Andy's the nicest person. He's a phenomenal engineer. And like I don't know that you possibly could meet anybody that has anything bad to say about Andy. That's a so good like point. That was and like because of that, I hit it off really well with that dude, because like we talked about him for a little while. I told him, you know, like we shared stories, whatever, and like that was a good common ground for us. Like, oh yeah, I did this work with Andy. Like he was great. Like, oh yeah, I did some work with Andy. Ooh, fucking knocking everything over. I did some work with Andy. Like he's awesome, and that's really nice, you know. And that's ever since, that's been kind of something that I hope as well, because I just feel like it's fucked up. I read this thing about how like a lot of young people, we're getting old, man, if I say young people, but like younger people, when they give them surveys and shit, a lot of people say like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they're like, I want to be famous. Like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, first of all, you probably don't. You don't want to be famous, but also like that doesn't give you anything specific that you want to do. That just means you want to get famous for who the hell knows what. And I think as an engineer, engineers kind of have a different quality. It's I don't want to be famous. Like I just want to be known well for my work. You know, you want to be well respected. You want to be known because you do good work and because you're good at what you do, because, you know, you've gotten yourself a solid place in your industry, and like that's something to aspire to. You know,
like being well respected, right? Like not like just well respected based on you as an engineer. Yeah, I get that. I can relate to that.
Yeah, and you know, something that somebody will call you, and this is what, you know, as an engineer, this is kind of, if you're freelancing, like this is what a lot of your work is based on, is that like somebody will call you based on your work. You do good work, and I know that, you know, you work well with people, so I want you to come into this session with me. I want you to work with me.
Right. Do you do a lot of freelancing these days?
That's what's important. I do a bit. I mean, that's my music stuff now. You know, one of the things that I realized, luckily for me, is as much as I love music and as much as I got into this to do music, I also did love sound, and I am not really built to do anything else. Like there's a lot of other stuff there's a lot of other stuff that I like, and it's not that I couldn't do another job, but I don't want to. I found something that I really love and that I'm good at. When I was in school, like I never learned anything as fast as I learned audio. I just, that stuff like sunk in and stayed and never left.
You found your calling as for whatever.
Yeah, and so there's nothing else that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make a career out of this, and because I was into all different aspects of audio, not just music, I realized that every engineer's goal when they're doing music is to only work on the stuff you like or only work on the stuff you want, right? And I realized that I could be working with audio. I'd be happy if my making money job was just working with audio. I'd be happy with that because that's what I want to do. And I'm always going to work on music. I'm never not going to work on music. Like mixing and recording music is a job. It's a hobby. It's a career. It's a passion. It's a love. It's all that stuff for me. One of the places I'm happiest in the world is in a session tracking, with 6 musicians and 45 microphones and a giant spaceship in front of me to fly. I do, man. I do. I'm a tracking engineer. That's for music, that's the best concert in the world, and it's just for me. And
wow, that's a great perspective.
It's so awesome. It's live. It's never gonna sound any better than it will with you sitting in the control room, having mic'd up everything, and oh man, it is. And I love that. But I was always gonna find a way to work on music, and I wanted to be able to work on just what I want to work on. So instead of doing music that I don't like in between music that I do like, I really love being able to do voiceover and learn what came with that, learn all the things about vocals and about audio that came with that, and then use that when I'm working on music, because I'm never going to stop working on music. And I have a few clients that I stay up with, and that I, one of my clients, I mixed the Big Wake record.
Yeah.
It was a year ago, yeah. And that was awesome. That was so much fun. They're a phenomenal band. Yeah. Their lead singer, Jerry, is one of my favorite musicians. He's just I love, we have connection for jam bands. We like a lot of the same music. And I love his style, and I love the tunes he writes. And I still, I mix for him. I'm working with him now. He wants to do a little solo EP.
Oh, dope.
So yeah, that I have that other EP that I'm finishing up for the folk band, and it's always stuff I'm gonna track down. When I'm done with this, I'm gonna go find some other people to mix for.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to take on a shitload of stuff, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of it, because I'm not trying to do it constrained to a time frame. Although that does make it a little tough, because then sometimes you don't focus in dude, I've done some of the best stuff that I've done when it's okay, I have this track, I need it mixed in 2 days, let's get this done.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on point because you have to be. You knock it out and it's great.
Yeah.
But also I don't have to do that as much anymore, and you
basically get to work on
the stuff I like.
You're at a point where you can select the artists that you work with, and in a way that enables you to do a great job. So whether you, even though you don't feel forced to do a good job in 2 days or whatever, because you enjoy the music and you love it, and there's less pressure, you could probably still deliver on a very high level.
Yeah, and it does. It always helps to work on something you like.
Yeah.
Working on music that you don't like. I mean, we've all done it. If you came up through studios or whatever it is, you've worked on stuff where you're yeah, I'm not so into this. But at the end of the day, I've always thought that as an audio engineer, depending on what you're doing, if I'm working on music, I'm kind of not allowed to say I don't like that, at least at the beginning. You know what I mean? This style of music, or something that's going to give me experience, you're not really allowed to say I don't like that, or that's not really the right way to say it, but you need to at least be open to it. You know what I mean? You don't have to love it. You don't have to go out and listen to it on your own, but you do need to be open to it, and you do need to say like, all right, maybe I don't want to record sitar music, but like I'll sit and listen to it and, you know, realize what's going to help me. Also, sitar music is amazing. And if anyone doesn't sit and listen to sitar music, like it'll change your perspective on music. But all that kind of stuff, you know, it just, and also I promise I didn't just pick sitar music because you're Indian.
I didn't even think about that. That's so funny.
Well, I'm glad because I didn't think of that either. No, that was always my go-to of just like the most unique thing, and also because one of my favorite guitar players, Derek Trucks. If you ever listen to Derek Trucks, he's a slide player, and one of the reasons he's so good is because he listened to a lot of Eastern music, especially with sitar, because sitar will teach you like those half tones and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and really, really unbelievable. And I used to use sitar as an example for students too, of like, this is a thing that you might not be so into to record, but then for some of the ones that were, you know, the ones that were cooler and the ones that were more into audio, I'd play some stuff for them. Anushka Shankar, Ravi Shankar's daughter. Bro,
yeah, insane.
She is mind blowing. She is so good, and like just listening to her is great. And so like, not to get off topic even more, but like as an engineer, like you can't really be shut out to stuff, you know, especially at the beginning. Once you find your lane, if you're a hip hop guy or a rock guy or a rap or hip hop and rap, if you're like EDM or, you know, jazz or whatever the hell you're doing, you know, go then you start moving that way, and that's cool. But like at the beginning, there's no such thing as bad experience.
Yeah.
I remember being in school, and they like when I was in SAE, they would always encourage us like, okay, if you're a rock guy, go find somebody that does like, you know, classical music or rap or something like that. Work together. Yeah. If you're a beat maker, go work with somebody that's an alternative rock artist or a folk artist or something like that. Like, find the other people in your class that work on stuff that you don't work on and collaborate, because that's when you're going to learn. That's when you're going to go, this is a technique that I never thought of, but I can apply.
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I remember Danny at one point having a mix to do where it was like a rock track, but the producer knew him and called him up because he wanted a little bit more of that hip hop vibe, which was most of what Danny was mixing at the time. I know like he does, you know, more pop stuff. He does a lot of other stuff now. But he wanted kind of that vibe. So he sought Danny out because he was like, look, you think like that, and this is a rock track, but I want your thought process as more of a hip hop mixer. Like, I want you to mix this just like you normally would. Do everything you would normally do, just do it to these files instead to, you know, a beat and some hip hop vocals. And it was a dope mix by the time it was done. It came out sounding really cool, and it's just like, that's kind of what you want, you know? Yeah. And that's why you got to be open to it. That's why you can't get mad when an artist goes like, hey, I found this other engineer, I want to do some work with him. Well, cool. Like, if you have a good relationship, sometimes it's just because they have a different technique. They record in a different workflow. They have a different perspective, and like, I want to bring that in. And maybe I'll call you halfway through the record and go, hey, can you come to the studio with us? Because like, I love the way you work and I want you here too. But like, you know, I need some other perspective on this. I want that, and that's what makes for interesting records.
I think like when you're starting out, getting all that perspective is really helpful, and then as you get better and better, you know, you can focus on the lane that you want to focus on, and you can specialize further and further. But that initial kind of like broad, you know, education is really, really helpful. Yeah, I learned a lot like from doing a lot of those hip hop sessions, just how to apply it to rock and how to really manage the low end and stuff. Like, I learned a lot of that from the hip hop world. So I totally agree with that, dude.
Yeah, man. You'll never learn more about managing low end than when you get a session with three kicks and two 808s.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
That, and dude, that that was one of the best parts about working at Engine Room was like a lot of that stuff was just trial by fire.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what working at a big studio is, and that's what learning to be an engineer is. It's just trial by fire. Yeah. It's not on my resume, but on like my qualifications list, I can tell people that I have soldered an SSL. That was unnerving. Sticking a soldering iron into an SSL was one of the scarier things I did, but I learned how to I figured it out. And granted, like I didn't know how to solder before I do that. It's not like that's what taught me how to solder, but like that shit was scary as hell the first time I did it. And you know, but you learn trial by fire. That's what it is. That's when I was in school, I remember learning that like that's how you get to be an engineer. You intern for anywhere from 6 months to 6 years, and then one day somebody gets sick and all of a sudden you're on.
Basically.
And if you can do it, now you're working. And if you can't do it, you fucked up.
That's basically what happened. I think I don't know, I think that happened to everybody. Like somebody fucked up is not the right way to say it, but somebody, missed a step and then just moved up.
Right. That's it. Yeah, I mean, it's not somebody fucked up necessarily. Like somebody got sick and couldn't come in. Somebody, they scheduled a session last minute and you're the only one there.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like that trial by fire moment, that opportunity when you're going like, all right, now's my chance. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's that thing.
And if you're prepared, then
that's why
you should be okay.
Right. And that's why you study so much, but that's also why every engineer I know can point to a session in the beginning where like everything went to shit.
Totally.
You hit that point where you got yourself in, now you're able to do sessions. Now you showed that you can do this, and that's cool. But then you're going to hit that session where everything goes to shit. And that's one of your first learning experiences of like, okay, what do I do when shit hits the fan?
Yeah.
And everything goes bad and you're just sweating and you're trying to just, not fuck up the session and keep the clients happy and keep everything running. Just awful, but that's the stuff that teaches
good learning. I mean, I don't remember my first one, but I do remember it's happened on a Trey Songz recording. It was rough. Did it? Man. Sample rates all different, happened? And we had the clock that we had to keep changing. I was like, oh my god.
Oh, shit. Yeah. I'm like, and everyone's got. It might not be the first one, but you have one of those at the beginning where you remember just like everything went to shit, and as an engineer, like your job is to be a problem solver. Right? Engineer is the Latin word for solve all the problems all the time. It's always what you do. So, but like, because of that, it gets to a really, and like, it's almost hard to say this without sounding, kind of like arrogant and shit, but it's really hard when you're out of solutions. As somebody who problem solves for your job, it's really hard when you hit that point where you're just going, okay, there's still a problem and I'm out of fixes.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else I can try. I don't know what else to check. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that's super uncomfortable as somebody who is built to solve problems and who's built for, especially when you tied in with that customer service thing, anything a client asks to do in a session, you're going like, sure, man, no problem. I got this, you know? And I used to tell students and like, my students and like assistants and stuff like that, a lot of times if you watch my face in a session, if I'm working with one of those clients, you can see that point every once in a while where the client asks for something and my immediate reaction, because it's just my job and what I do, is to go like, sure, man, no problem, we'll take care of it. And then my face like turns for a second because it just goes like, wait, what the fuck did I just agree to? Can I do that? I don't know if we can do that. How the fuck am I gonna do that shit? All right, now, all right, we can do it. All right, that's okay. But like, you have that moment of like, what did I just agree to? I think I can do this, and so like that thing that gets really tough. But you just, those fuck ups teach you kind of how to work through that whole process.
Yeah.
You know, but like running out of fixes, that's where that was going. I lost my place. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
Running out of fixes is super unnerving. So like when you're trying to do that's the time when I feel like most engineers would remember that a session went to shit, when you're like have a bunch of stuff go wrong and you're running low on your list of fixes and you're going like, all right, I already swapped the cable, I already changed the pre, I already swapped the DI box, I changed the patch cable, I restarted the fucking board, like I restarted the computer. What else am I gonna do? There's nothing else to change, man. Like, what is wrong?
Yeah,
you know?
That's when you start sweating.
That's when you start sweating. I remember the first time it happened to me. It was a problem. We were recording guitar, and there were like a bunch of people in the room, and the guitar players in the control room, the amps out in the live room. The sound's not right, and I'm running back and forth. I'm swapping cables. I'm changing settings. Oh my God, I'm pouring sweat. And I felt so bad. Like, luckily, everyone was cool the first time it happened to me. The guitar player was a little crotchety, but like everyone else, they were all older dudes, so they had all been around studios for a while, and they understand like shit breaks, you know. Yeah. Shit happens, like whatever. And it wasn't anything I did wrong, and especially like the engineer, who was like a real old school engineer from England. You remember that guy, Gary Lyons?
No, I don't.
Big Gary was cool as hell. I learned a lot from him. I worked with him a few times. But like I know that he could see that. He knew damn well what was going on, and he could see me just like sweating. Yeah. He knew that face of like, this assistant is like at his wit's end, because he's at, like I swapped everything I could think of. I swapped the guitar player's own stuff. I was like, all right, maybe it's your cable. Let me give you one of our cables. Like, I'm just everything I could think of. And it was so bad. But like, it taught me, first of all, it taught me, you know, you learn a little bit about keeping composure through all that. You learn how to deal with problems. It taught me, and eventually you learn the sounds of problems too. You learn what the difference is between a hum that needs a ground lifter and static that needs a new cable, you know, or something like that. You start to be able to identify problems a little bit more of like, okay, that's clipping, but that's coming from the preamp. So it's, you know, I don't need to check the converter. I don't need to check the cables. I don't need to check the guitar level. I just need to turn down the pre. You know, and you get to that after a while, but initially when it happens right at the beginning, all fucking bets are off. Man.
Wait, so what?
You're
what
doing anything and everything you can think of.
Issue?
The issue ended up actually being with the amp we were using, and it was so bad too, because this was early on, and we were using the JMP stack, the big Marshall, and it was breaking up a little bit, and it was like the guitar signal breaking up. But I was so early on that I kind of didn't know the difference yet. And so initially, like, the guitar player is going like, I'm hearing some weird distortion. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're recording through a fucking Marshall stack. Of course you're hearing distortion. It's all distortion. How is there not distortion? Like, this is why you record through this thing. It's giant and loud. You know what I mean? But it was preamp distortion. It was a problem in the preamp of the stack, and it was actually distorting before it was getting it, like, on its way into the amp, essentially. Yeah, right. So that, like, I also didn't entirely know what I was listening for. That was, on a little side note, that was one of the best parts about working with Mark as an engineer, because since he was mainly a mastering engineer, he has those insane like machine ears that hear things that maybe aren't even there. Right. So like, he can hear everything so well. So doing sessions with him, I learned so much of when he would say like, you drove that compressor too hard, it's breaking up. Like, you can hear it clipping, or you're over compressing the signal. Like, I can hear it breaking up. And initially I was going like, what are you talking about? I don't hear that. And then after a while of working with him, I was like, oh, that's what he's hearing. Okay, now I know what this sounds like. Now I know what not to do.
Yeah.
You know, because now I know what I'm listening for. And that's something else I used to tell students of, like, when you're practicing, turn it all the way up and listen to it sound terrible. Listen to the crunchy. Listen to what that sounds like, so that you know, so that when it happens in small doses on something you're working on, you can still pick it out and you know what you're listening for. If you don't know what digital distortion sounds like, you're never going to be able to pick it out of something, because you don't know what you're listening for. So like get that idea of what you're listening for, you know? And you develop that over time. Like that, once I knew that, and so like that session where everything went wrong, like that preamp gain, later on I went back and I listened to the recording and I heard it. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's what they were talking about. All right, I get it, you know? And because so much of it is such little details, but like this guitar player had been a studio musician for like 20 or 30 years. He knows damn well what his guitar and the amp and the whole rig is supposed to sound like. So when something's off, he knows it, you know? And maybe he hasn't picked up like too much engineering over all that time, so he can't tell you exactly what the problem is, but he can tell you something's wrong. And usually, I mean, they're good enough to tell you what the problem is too, but they at least know something's wrong, you know, because this isn't the same sound that I get every time I take this guitar with this setup ever. Right. You know what I mean? So, and all that's valuable. And you gotta trust those too. I get this with some of the voiceover stuff where it's just like, okay, I feel like I hear something a little weird. It's probably okay. Well, no, it's not okay, because that sound wasn't there before, and you heard a difference. Why did you choose to ignore it? Right. You know what I mean? Like, don't ignore it. Maybe you do listen back to it, and maybe you realize like, oh, that was nothing. It was actually just like a sound in the back of the room, and yeah, it was nothing. But you go back to check, because don't ignore it, because it might be something. And if it is something, then all of a sudden you realize, shit, halfway through this vocal, we picked up ground hum, and now there's hum on the rest of the track, and now I can't use it.
Yeah, that's the worst.
So it is, and you gotta take that time. And look, it's gonna happen. You're gonna do that as an engineer, like as an up and coming engineer. You're gonna do some shit like that. You make those mistakes, you know. Samir, I'm sure when he's on, he'll tell you about the Phantom episode of Combat Jack.
I can't wait. I think I've heard it, but I can't wait to hear it from him. Like, I've only heard it in passing stories, like this legend
great story.
passed down among the ages.
I'm not gonna say any more than that. But the Phantom episode of Combat Jack, make sure you ask him about it. I love you, Samir. That's one of my favorite stories, because it's such a perfect example of like something that happens early on where you're just like, I'm fucked, you know. But if you're a good engineer, and if you just keep working and keep learning, like, remember that you're not fucked. It happens, and like you will recover. You know what I mean? Like,
it happens to everybody.
It happens. You get it back. Yeah, you recover. That was always one of the things that I tried to impress the most on my students when I was teaching, was just like, dude, whatever you're going through, whatever weird things you're doing, whatever fuck ups you're making as an engineer, we all did it. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything uncommon. You're learning. It's how we learned. It's how our friends learned. It's how all the other engineers learned. Like, that's the process of learning. Yeah. And that's the only
just go with it. Just go with
it. Just go with it, because that's how it goes. That's it. Call it learning, call it rite of passage, call it whatever you want, but that's how you engineer an audio career. End of podcast. No.
Wow, well done, sir. I must applaud you. Wow, nobody in the history of this podcast has done that. Oh, that was so perfect.
I'm such a dork.
Oh, I salute you, sir. Oh my god, that is hilarious, dude.
I hate myself for that a little bit.
Oh no, that was no. I could not. It was just there. It was perfect.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
but yeah, that
man.
All
yeah, it's all part of it. And
learn, get better.
And look, I'm just really happy that everybody that came up there is now like doing well, and like has a career and stuff, and it's really inspiring, and hopefully all these lessons are gonna follow through and get to some people, and if anything, it's good to just catch up and just like.
I hope so. Yeah, dude. Always. Yeah, I hope so. I hope anyone takes something away from it. I know I ramble a lot, but so it goes. A lot of engineers do. A lot of engineers like to talk too much. I am in that. Dude, and
we have a lot to say.
On a quick side note, that was what always blew my mind about students that like didn't ask any questions or didn't didn't really get anything out of it, because like and it's not just me. Like, look, I got a big mouth. I talk too much. It's not like, I know that, but a lot of engineers like to talk about engineering because we don't have anyone else that understands the shit we say. When I talk about work to other people, nobody knows what I'm talking about. It's not like I work in a regular office and I'm going like, oh yeah, this happened in the office and this guy did a crazy thing, and they're going, oh yeah, I have a guy like that in my office. I get it. Yeah, nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So when we get a chance to dork out and talk to other engineers, oh my God, So as a student, like, all they had to do was get you talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can learn so much. I did that to Ant and to Chris Griffin so many times, where like I would be sitting with Ant and I'd be like, yo, I'm recording piano in a few days. What's up? Like, that was basically it. Like, what do you do? And then it's an hour and a half later and we've talked through like 5 different piano recording techniques, why he does what he does and how I can make that work.
Yeah.
Just because I said like, dude, piano, what's up?
Literally
all it takes sometimes. You know what I mean?
Very few people who can talk to us like that. Yeah, totally.
Right, and getting that stuff out of an engineer, and once you start an engineer going like that, and like I said, man, that was how I learned. Having those talks with Ant and with Chris and with Mark and with Caffrey and with all those guys, like, and with you and with Danny and with Lee and with Gabe and with Millis, like, all of those conversations were what taught me what I now know. Sitting in podcasts with Samir is what taught me a lot about working with vocals and working with voice and how to position mics for that. And, sitting in hip hop sessions with Danny taught me a lot, and just like all of that. That's how you learn from other engineers. That's the best way to learn, because experience is what does it. And once you get some engineer friends, you don't even have to learn from your own experience. You can learn from your friends' experiences.
That's true. That is true.
Learn from experience that's not just your own. Learn from everything.
Well, that's hopefully what this podcast will do. We'll find out. Time will tell.
You should. Time will tell. You should always do this podcast in your Student for Life T-shirt.
Oh yeah, I like that T-shirt. Yeah, but I figured that would look really weird if it looks like I never change clothes.
If you're always wearing the same. If you're always wearing, hey man, maybe that's your mantra, and you have like 10 of those shirts and you just wear that all the time. That's like it's like what fucking or like what like but like Steve Jobs did that kind of shit. Like, entrepreneurs do that shit where they wear the same thing every day because it eliminates decision making.
Oh my, yeah, I don't think I could do that. But I get it, man. I get it. Anyway, I'm gonna. What are you up to today? I got a mix that I gotta finish.
I gotta pack more. We're moving soon.
Yeah, when do you move? 2 weeks?
Yeah, like 2 weeks.